We're less than a month away from NFL training camps really kicking into high gear, and the exhibition season is almost upon us. And John Breech, NFL writer, CBSSports.com, is with us. How geeked are you for training camp coverage, sir?
Gold, we have 23 days until the first preseason game. And I think the Chargers rookies report the training camp this weekend. I'm geeked, man. I'm already ready. The countdown's clearly already started here.
23 days to the first preseason game. Who is it?
Lions Chargers Hall of Fame game. Let's do it.
Oh, that is very, very exciting. I love preseason football like I love. Well, never mind. All right, let's. I texted you this question, and this is not to say that it's a stupid conversation, because none of these things are stupid. It's just one of those dopey sports radio questions. So I'm terming it the Summer Stupid Series. Today is John Breech. So I appreciate you playing along. Which quarterback going into this season has the most pressure on him?
You know, Gold, let me just say I'm glad you gave me a heads up on this question because I ended up making tiers. I did my homework here. I have tiers of pressure because I think there are different quarterbacks that are going to feel pressure in different ways. Let's start off with who's under the most pressure to win a Super Bowl. I think that's Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen.
Right.
Those are two guys that haven't been able to get – they're not worried about losing their jobs. If they don't win a playoff game this year, they're going to be starting in Buffalo and Baltimore for the next decade. So they're not worried about losing their job. But, hey, you've got the MVPs, but they haven't been able to knock off Patrick Mahomes. They haven't been able to get through the AFC title game. They haven't even been able to get to the Super Bowl. So I think that is an issue one of those two guys needs to that's the monkey on their back. And then let's go one tier down. Who's under the most pressure to win a playoff game? I would put Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott in that tier. I mean, we talk about the Commanders just getting to the NFC Championship last year. So now every single NFC team has been to the NFC title game since 2010, except for the Dallas Cowboys. So I think Dak Prescott needs to get them over that hump. And we saw Justin Herbert melt down in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And then, look, let's get to the guys who need a great year to keep the starting job, and they are arguably under the most pressure. And that's now we're getting to the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young, I think this is a huge year for him, obviously, because if he doesn't look as good as he did at the end of last season, if he plays like Bryce Young earlier in his career, he's probably not going to last in Carolina much longer. And then I'll end with the guys who need to earn their paycheck and could potentially lose their starting job in the next year or two. That is Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa.
I think you and I, by the way, John Breech, CBS Sports, I appreciate you doing your homework. It was not my intent to give you an assignment that would take thought and preparation, but you have already determined that you're counting down to the Lions and Chargers for the Hall of Fame game. So obviously there was time. You had time to do it, so I appreciate that. I'm interested because I agree with everything you just said. I am curious where Aaron Rodgers fits into this conversation, because I would argue that the pressure isn't as much on Aaron Rodgers as it seems to be on Mike Tomlin, Arthur Smith, because I don't know that Rodgers will be viewed differently if he's not able to take Pittsburgh to another level, but maybe Tomlin and Smith will.
Yeah, see, that one, I think Aaron Rodgers is a little bit harder to classify because you do have kind of last year's – the Steelers know what they're getting with Aaron Rodgers. They're not getting a guy in his prime. They're getting a guy on the tail end of his career. So there's no guarantee he's going to go out there and lead you to the playoffs. But I will say there's pressure on Aaron Rodgers in the sense that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. He has managed to finish over 500 no matter who his quarterback has been. The guy has had Mason Rudolph, Mitchell Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields last year, Russell Wilson. It just doesn't matter. So if Aaron Rodgers becomes that guy to end that streak, that might be a little black eye on his legacy. So if they don't get to at least 9-8, I think that's where you could see the impact with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, the Steelers want to get to the playoffs. They're all in. So I do think there's a little bit pressure. But like you said, I think there's more pressure on the coach and the front office to prove that going all in with a 41-year-old quarterback actually makes sense.
And by the way, and I am Team Tomlin, none of it made sense to me. The fact that Pittsburgh, and I go back to, and John Breech from CBS Sports is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show, at John Breech on Twitter. I go back to when Kirk Cousins was still in Washington, and how I got Washington didn't want to commit long term. They were willing to pay him a lot of money for a year, and then another year with the the NFL salary mechanisms, but they weren't willing to commit. But at the same time, they weren't paving the way for his exit by grooming a quarterback of the future. Never figured that out. Why hasn't Pittsburgh, especially toward the end of Roethlisberger, why weren't they, because it's a smart organization, why weren't they laying the groundwork for the next guy?
Well, I think that they thought Ben Roethlisberger was just going to be there. He's one of those guys that you're not going to get rid of. You're just going to let him play till the wheels fall off, and that's kind of what happened. And so then you start looking at, if you're the Steelers, when do we start drafting a quarterback, or when do we start taking that seriously? Because we know Roethlisberger is getting up there in age, and they didn't do it until 2022, obviously, when they took Kenny Pickett. So they did have kind of that gap year where they said, you know what, let's go out and find someone. I think that's when they got Mitchell Trubisky, and they probably figured they could go out and get a veteran. Now, 4 years into it, you kind of don't have that excuse, but I think that, again, they've been finishing over 500. They've been making the playoffs. So at this point, Tomlin probably feels we're a quarterback away. I can get this team to the playoffs, but we got to have a quarterback to be a Super Bowl contender. And so now here they are, because like you just said with the Roethlisberger stuff, no matter what Rodgers does this year, he's probably only playing 1 year. So they're going to be back at square one with the quarterback situation next year. They're going to be back in purgatory and then back to figuring out what they have to do, back to the drawing board. So this is going to be an interesting year in Pittsburgh.
What's interesting, you said they're going to, Roethlisberger was a guy who was going to play till the wheels fell off. He played without wheels for maybe the last 3 or 4 years of his career. No mention of Joe Burrow. So I know you have Bengals in your blood. So explain to me where on this spectrum Burrow fits.
Well, Burrow's a little bit different because I don't think he has the same pressure as Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, because he's been to the Super Bowl. He's already got that under his belt. Obviously, the Bengals would love to win a Super Bowl, but I also don't think that anybody views the Bengals as the best team in the AFC. I think if you rank those teams, that most people have the Bengals below the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens. So they're not in that, hey, this team should automatically win the Super Bowl tier. And I also think he got the benefit of the doubt last year because he was coming off an unprecedented wrist injury where he tore that ligament. Nobody knew what he was going to look like. And so, I mean, Burrow has pressure. I think people, obviously, the Bengals finishing 9-8, 2 straight seasons, that's not acceptable for a team with that kind of talent. Obviously, there is pressure for him to get that team back to the playoffs, at least, since they haven't gone in each of the past 2 seasons. And I think that's where Burrow is. If they get to the divisional round of the playoffs, I think fans in Cincinnati will be like, okay, that's a fine season. Obviously, fans would love if the Bengals won the Super Bowl, but I don't think they have that same kind of pressure that, say, the Bills or the Ravens have.
I found it interesting, and I agreed 100% because I listed Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott together on my pressure meter, if you will. Dak has been a very good quarterback for a very long time that has not done anything in the postseason. That's got to happen at some point. Of course, I'm not even sure that the pressure is on Dak as much as it's on Jera and the new regime there. And Justin Herbert has zero. It's not just zero playoff wins, because I'm not a wins or a quarterback stat guy, because I don't think they are. It's really about the team. But they have done that. He's basically a 500 quarterback for his career. And while they had a good year last year and he was amazing, man, when they got to the playoffs, they were just so bad. I don't know if it was him or just the team in general. I just can't explain how they were just so bad in a playoff game. It almost looked like the moment was too big for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at both of Justin Herbert's playoff games. Remember the first one against against Jaguars, they blew a 27-0 lead, and Herbert didn't play very well in that game. The Chargers put up 27 points in that first half because Trevor Lawrence threw 4 interceptions, so he kind of gifted them all of those scores. And so it's kind of like, and not to put Justin Herbert in the same category as Andy Dalton because he's a much, much better quarterback, but it's kind of where Dalton would just kind of struggle every time they got to the playoffs for whatever reason. And so that's what we've kind of seen from Justin Herbert. It's only a 2-game sample size. It's not huge, and the Chargers can certainly get over the hump. But you see Jim Harbaugh's out there kind of building this offense that can run the ball, and it feels like he's doing that because he knows, hey, we can't have all the pressure on the quarterback when we get to the postseason. We got to take some of the pressure off. We got to be able to run the ball. So I feel like Harbaugh is building a team that he thinks can win in the postseason. Obviously, he knows how to do that because he went to 3 straight NFC title games with the 49ers.
I think don't you think people kind of sleep on just how great a coach Jim Harbaugh is, because he was so good in San Francisco. I know, didn't win a Super Bowl. I get it. Got there, lost to his brother, and then went to Michigan and turned. I mean, if you could have to turn Michigan around, I guess he did it. But Michigan was, they couldn't beat Ohio State. And he had a hard time beating Ohio State and Michigan State at first, and then he turned them into a machine. I just think people sleep on how good a coach he is.
Yeah, which is amazing because everywhere he's gone, he's been successful. And you go back to Stanford and Andrew Luck, and he's leading them to bowl games and kind of flipped that program around. Then he took the 49ers job and had it for 4 seasons and went to the NFC title game in 3 straight seasons, which is very, very difficult to do in the NFL. And, of course, they only got to 1 Super Bowl, as you said, didn't win one. So, and then the national title at Michigan. So every level he's at, he's been successful. It's because his philosophy works, which is, hey, look, I'm going to run the ball. I'm going to play good defense. And if I have a talented quarterback, that's a plus. So I think he's just trying to build this team. And unfortunately, he's stuck in the same division as Patrick Mahomes. Otherwise, the Chargers might be even a little bit better.
Yeah, he also won at UC San Diego, which, I mean, I don't know that they've got a pedigree of winning football out there, but that's where he started. Then went to Stanford, and yeah, he turned that program into at the time it was a BCS era of college football. He turned them into a BCS level team. John Breech is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. 2 more things, and then we'll let you go. First is the back to Joe Burrow for a second. I read the story today where the burglary at his house prevented him from buying a Batmobile. How do you process that story? Nobody is happy to be robbed, but it probably saved him $3 million in a totally unnecessary purchase.
Also, $3 million in insurance money he's likely saving there. He's not sure how much it costs to insure a Batmobile. But so on Hard Knocks, yeah, I mean, it's got to be an insanely high price. But you look at Hard Knocks last year when they featured the AFC North, Burrow was kind of caught on the hot mic saying, hey, guys, I just spent $2.9 million on a Batmobile, and it turns out that, hey, look, he decided not to make the purchase, or he got the money back or whatever. He got a refund after his home got burglarized. And look, Joe Burrow is a private guy, so I do understand why he doesn't like that people now know where he lives, where his house is, because reporters were camped out there for the whole week following that burglary. So I get it, but man, that would have been pretty cool if you lived in Cincinnati and you see Burrow just cruising through downtown in his Batmobile. So I feel like everyone loses with that one.
All right, final thing for John Breech. I know the NFL.com is putting out their top 100 players in the league this year, and my guess is there will be no Panthers on it. But that's not. I mean, it's not easy. You've got if every team was distributed evenly, the most you'd get is 3. Panthers have been bad for a long time. Maybe Derrick Brown will get it, but Pete Prisco put out his list. I think it was published on the 3rd of July. Did you have any major beefs with Prisco's list, which had Patrick Mahomes still number 1?
I think I did have one, and I sent a text or something to Pete, and it's not a huge beef, but he did not have Matthew Stafford on his list. And look, Matthew Stafford he had Jared Goff on the list, by the way,
right,
but not Matthew Stafford. So he ranked 11 quarterbacks. Stafford has a Super Bowl win, and the Rams only won it because they traded for him. I think he's probably a top 10 quarterback. I'm not going to put him in the top 5 because he's getting a little bit older. I don't think he's quite at that level anymore, but I have a hard time saying that there are 100 better players or more important or more valuable players than Matthew Stafford in the NFL. So I would say that was my biggest surprise on his list.
Yeah, last quarterback in his ranking, I believe, was number 91 in Tua, who's got his own issues to deal with, and so do the Miami Dolphins and all of that. John Breech, I appreciate you joining us for our first Summer Stupid Series conversations of the offseason. I appreciate your time. 23 days, and you can cover Lions-Chargers.
23 days. Thanks for having me, Gold.
You're the man. I appreciate it, John. John Breech, at John Breech on Twitter.